Welcome back to Outside Views, and today we're talking about a phenomenon I can only describe as geopolitical whiplash. And we are examining whether the UK, having spent a decade defining itself by its separation from Europe, is now being forced to rush straight back into Europe's arms, not out of solely economic necessity, though that is huge, but out of sheer geopolitical survival. And the question is, will Brexit Britain respond to American demands with closer ties to the EU? And my personal view is a resounding yes, not because the current government has suddenly developed a pro-European conscience, but because the America First reality under the new US administration has brutally exposed the core lie of the Brexit project. That the UK could stand alone, a major player floating perfectly between the two continents. That fantasy has been destroyed, and the price of isolation is now too terrifying to pay. For decades, the UK's foreign policy was built around the special relationship with the United States. It was the foundation upon which British global identity kind of rested. And the entire promise of Brexit was predicated on the idea that leaving the EU would allow the UK to become the US primary and unconstrained partner in Europe, securing massive trade deals and greater strategic influence. And that promise is now dust. The new US national security strategy, the America First document, has delivered a cold, hard slap of reality to London. In this document, Washington treats the UK and the EU as a single entity. Think about that for a second. After all the fanfare, all the talk of sovereignty and global Britain, the most important ally in the world has essentially decided that the UK is not strategically distinct from the bloc it left. It has been downgraded, lumped in with the continent it tried to escape. Lord Daniel Finkelstein, a prominent conservative thinker, nailed it perfectly when he said the populist in the White House had ended the Pax Americana last week, and that we are living through the founding of the post-war world. And this is the ultimate humiliating lesson of the new global order. Isolation is weakness. The moment the UK chose to sever its deep institutional ties with its continental neighbours, it lost its strategic importance to its transatlantic partner. The US has no patience for managing a fractured relationship. It wants a strong, unified European front to counter global threats. And the UK's self-imposed isolation is now seen in Washington not as a virtue, but as a geopolitical inconvenience. Furthermore, the US president has compounded this damage by explicitly including the UK in his radical far-right rhetoric in media interviews. When the US president openly aligns his politics with the UK's most extreme voices, it forces London to confront the fact that its core foreign policy partner of decades has become unpredictable, unreliable, and even hostile to core British values. And this new reality demands a strategic reassessment, forcing the UK to look away from the chaos across the Atlantic and toward the stability of its immediate neighbourhood. And the reaction in London is telling. There is a growing sober analysis across the media and the political class about the loss of the core foreign policy partner. And this is why we are seeing the formerly unthinkable happen. The discussion about the UK's closer and even institutional alignment with the continent is gaining serious momentum. We see government officials making more frequent visits to the continent, and more profoundly, we see the House of Commons holding votes in favour of a customs union with the EU. A customs union, though, not the customs union. And this isn't an accident. It's a panic-driven response to the complete dissolution of the post-war geopolitical framework. The economic reality, which has been screaming at the government for years, is finally converging with the geopolitical reality. And even leading Brexiteers and figures like Conservative opposition leader Kemi Badenoch have been forced to refer to the EU withdrawal as an economic shock. The language is shifting because the public mood has shifted. A stable majority of over 55% now consider Brexit a mistake and favor closer ties with Brussels, with a full third even wanting to re-enter the EU relatively soon. And the new necessity is this. If Washington is treating the UK as part of Europe, and if the US cannot be relied upon as the anchor of the UK's foreign policy, then the only sensible self-preserving strategic move is to re-anchor to the EU. And this shift must be more than just diplomatic visits and friendly treaties. It needs to be institutional. The UK needs to regain a seat at the table on issues where the EU has genuine power. The massive and growing threat posed by Russia demands seamless integration of intelligence, sanctions and defense planning, and the UK cannot afford to be an island in a critical theater of war. And we've seen that in Berlin just today when I'm filming this. The catastrophic economic cost of isolation is now quantifiable. Hundreds of billions lost and years of lost growth. Closer alignment with the single market is the fastest, most effective way to address the structural deficit caused by Brexit. And the UK's voice on the world stage is magnified when it speaks in concert with the EU's 27 member states, rather than shouting across the channel alone. The current government is already walking a tightrope, trying to manage the economic fallout by pursuing a reset agenda. And they're not doing enough. I will talk about this in a few days as well. But that reset is too timid, too small to address the structural damage or the geopolitical vacuum left by the US shift. It's an exercise in gradualism that the New World Order simply won't allow. The American demand is not for a friendlier UK, it's for a stronger, more coherent Europe. The UK is now learning the hard way that to be relevant to the US, it must be first reintegrated into the EU orbit. And the key to this entire equation, at least at the beginning, is a customs union. A vote in the House of Commons in favor of exploring that option is a profound crack in the dam. Joining a customs union with the EU addresses the immediate trade friction, eases the cost of living crisis, and signals to both Washington and Brussels that the UK is serious about stability. It would be a partial yet vital reversal of the policy of isolation. And this is the ultimate and painful irony. The decision to leave the EU, ostensibly to gain sovereignty in a closer relationship with the US, has resulted in a loss of sovereignty to the dictates of the new American foreign policy and a forced recognition that Europe is the only stable home for the UK's long-term interests. The years of talking about global Britain and the glorious opportunities outside the bloc now look utterly naive. No, not just now, but are exposed by the ruthless pragmatism of America first. The geopolitical landscape has shifted so dramatically that the path back to the continent, however limited, however slow and however politically painful, is no longer a choice of preference, it's a mandate of survival. And the question is not if the UK will move closer to the EU, but how quickly the government will accept that the American demands require a definitive institutional embrace of its European neighbours. The survival of the post-war UK depends on it.